Reddit, what is your most embarrassing or awkward hookup? Had a girl ask me my name 3 times during the same blowjob. We had met earlier that night, so she was blowing me and having a conversation with me while at the same time repeatedly forgetting my name. She then told me she wouldn't have sex with me because we had just met, but that I could come on her tits or in her ass, whichever I preferred. We dated for 6 months. Back in my heavy drinking days, it wasn't too uncommon for me to pass out during sex, which is awkward enough by itself. Usually this resulted in the ladies being unhappy with me. However, on one such occasion, my lucky laddie friend from the night before had apparently stayed the night and for some unknown reason felt bad about her inability to finish me off. Cue morning blowjob in bed before I need to start getting ready for work. This is all her idea, mind you. Not that I was about to complain. So, I'm lying in bed but kind of sitting up a bit so I can get a better look at what's happening. And as I near the point of climax, I do the gentlemanly thing and warn her. And hey, I can totally understand not swallowing. If the roles were reversed, I'm not sure how keen I'd be to do that. But unbeknownst to me, this girl has some sort of total aversion to semen. Right as I'm about to climax, she pulls me out of her mouth and rears her head back. She closes her eyes, turns her head, and points my penis away from her. So, like, basically pointing it right back at me. This all happens in one fluid motion and I don't realize it until after I've already shot myself directly in the eye and all over my own face. One of my eyes was all bloodshot for a few hours and I had to continuously reassure my co-workers that I was fine and they needn't worry about it. I never really talked to that girl again. TLDR, came in my own eye on accident. It stung. I had met a girl at a bar while we were both thoroughly intoxicated. She came back to my place, and things were going well. We got into it, and we were in the missionary position when her facial expression suddenly changed from pleasure to horror, and her cheeks bulged out like a balloon. She pushed me off of her a split second before the seal blew and vomit sprayed upwards in a 4-foot geyser that rained down all over her and my bed. Suffice it to say, she was mortified, and apologized profusely. I showed her into my shower, and while she got herself cleaned up I took my puke-covered sheets off the bed and put them in the wash. She came out a few minutes later, and I offered her some tea. We sat in awkward silence at my kitchen table, sipping chamomile. I asked if she was feeling better, and she said she was. The color had definitely returned to her cheeks. After another minute or so of awkward silence, she shrugged and said, "I'm still up for it if you are." TLDR, we had X on the floor. I was a broken-hearted freshman in college with no access to alcohol, so I decided to try dating online. Except instead of doing this normally, someone started talking to a 42-year-old, rather unattractive lesbian. I went to her apartment one night to meet up, and for some reason she didn't give me alcohol. So basically I just sat there morosely because I missed my ex. We watched the L Word and then she made out with me as I laid there unmoving. I spent the night because I didn't know what else to do, and there was some super awkward fondling until she gave up because I continued to be an unmoving blob. Got a little lost on the way home, but at least I was alive. Roommates were pretty confused when I tried to explain to them where I was. Here's the TLDR for every post. Drunken ex. He just stared right into my eyes the whole time, didn't change his facial expressions or make any noises. It was just weird. Also had a friend who was with a guy who started crying in the middle of doggy style. I've got a couple from college days. One was getting a pretty good blowy from this Amazon-sized chick. Not fat, just 6 feet 8 feet or so. I'm 5 feet 10. I was pretty drunk, so she had to really work on it, and she asked me to let her know when I was ready. So, when I feel that feels Goodman JPG, I loudly make the ocking sound of a gun. She sort of says HMPH and I say boom. As I shoot my load hard. It goes down her throat, apparently down her trachea, and also comes out her nose. She's peered. I start laughing, since, well, that's funny as hell. She apparently open palm hits me. I say apparently since I have no recollection. The last thing I remember is laughing. My roommate wakes me up the next morning with a cami D hanging out of my pants and an enormous handprint on the left side of my face. I had a headache that lasted several days, and I really think I had a concussion too dating a very clingy chick in late college, but the ex was awesome. She wanted to do all kinds of freaky stuff, and the harder the better. She really wanted me to do rape fantasies for her, but that made me feel uneasy. Anyway, we had raucous gnarly sex most days. Well, you can only stick your D in crazy for so long. One night she reached down, pulled off my rubber, and pulled me back into her just as I was coming. Really peered me off. I broke up with her that night. Apparently a few days later, she took a test and found out she was pregnant. This is about the same time that she slipped on some ice in her work's parking lot, fell and broke her pelvis and had a miscarriage. Turns out at the hospital they confirmed the miscarriage and also identified early onset osteoporosis. She was 27. Damn. This means that not only did the universe keep me from becoming a dad sooner than I was ready for, and with crazy, mind you, that also, I could have broken her pelvis during crazy red acid monkey watching the Banana Channel XTL. DR got knocked out by an Amazon after blasting her face, nearly broke a girl's pelvis while getting freaky. I once fingered a guy and he cried. First of all, this was back in my heavy drinking days and I'm not proud of it. With that said, here we go. After an entire day of drinking, a friend of mine and I decide to go to the bar. We literally walked in, ordered a beer and a shot, did the shot and he told me he had to go. Fine, whatever, I stayed. I ended up talking to a regular at that particular bar. I knew who he was. In fact, he had hooked up with another friend of mine, and he convinced me to go back to his place to smoke some weed. I am blackout drunk at this point. I vaguely remember making out on the walk there, us not having sex because it was Shark Week and me trying to give him a blowjob. Cue me waking up, disoriented with the urge to pee like no other. I have to pee so bad that I can't even swing my legs over the side of the bed. I'm laying there freaking out because I know the minute I try to move, I'm going to pee everywhere. I laid there for what seemed like forever and it wasn't subsiding, so I just went for it. Yep. Piss everywhere. Including the floor. I grabbed all of my stuff and headed for the bathroom. Cleaned myself up and left. As soon as I shut the door, I realized I had forgotten my underwear and my shoes. I left anyway. I definitely got a nasty text from him later telling me my shoes and underwear were in a bag on his porch. I still run into him every once in a while and we joke about it now, but at the time I was completely mortified. Good times. I met this girl at a party and ended up taking her back to my friend's house to frick. Anyway, we're on the ground, going at it. Robot Rock by Daft Punk was in my head all day, so I started thrusting to the beat in my head and singing rock, robot, rock. She asked me what I was doing, and I responded with it's just Daft Punk baby. She says oh okay, and we keep on fricking. Andrea Smith 1986 can validate this story because it really happened. Girl just lay there. Weird as hell. She seemed into it and I'm pretty good at the foreplay. Weird girl. Never talk to her again. Bridget Jones moment. As in, he found the Spanx but then took about 20 minutes to get them off. Awkward as frick. This happened to a friend. I was just the guy behind the mixing board. We'd all been recording and partying for the course of 3 days while some friends of mine were home on a break from touring the country in their band. It was pretty typical to have different girls rolling through, sometimes in the same night. So, after we wrap up recording one beautiful Illinois night, the partying starts up and people start arriving. Their merch guy has some girl he's been hipping on forever coming over. I think she was from Georgia or Alabama, so she had quite a drive for these 1 or 2 nights of partying. When I found out how excited he was about this girl, I leapt into action. There was no thinking, just doing. I ran back downstairs, into the filthy basement where all the instruments, amplifier, microphones and the merch guy's shitty mattress were all set up. He literally slept 2 feet behind the drums, at which was loaded with microphones. So I ran down there while no one was paying attention and switched all the recording gear back on. Fast forward a few hours. Merch guy and his lady friend make their way downstairs. Perfection. Everyone else gathers around the mixing board on the main level of the house. We hear everything. His awful game. Her telling him she was on her period. Him lasting for all of 1 minute and 41 seconds of X. To which he replied, "Really? Even with a condom on?" And finally, we hear him go to the bathroom, take a pee, blow his nose, and take a shower. He left her there mumbling curses, waiting for him to bring back some tissues to clean up with, for about 10 minutes. When he comes back in, we decide to let him know what's up. We start playing music back through the monitors in the basement. He plays it off like, "Oh no, they can't hear us. They're just playing music from upstairs. They probably don't know the system down here is on." So, we used my talkback microphone to completely blow him out of the water. They were good sports and came back up to keep partying. Obviously I kept the recording around for a long time. I'd upload it, but that hard drive has long since been corrupted. TL. Doctor, I recorded one of my friends having really bad X, then busted him out by playing music and talking to them through the loudspeakers. I'd been seeing a girl for a few weeks, but the X was awful. I thought it was because we were always drunk when we hooked up, but then I realized it was because she just lay there and didn't really do anything. So the last time I stayed with her, I told her I was tired and just wanted to sleep. She started crying because I wouldn't frick her, so I fricked her. Sympathy X is not good. And yes, I definitely swallowed some of it, oh goddamn it. Hooked up with a girl once. No way it was going to happen again with her, when I was in the army. I was too into it to give a damn about the little known fact that I knew of her. She had joined the army for the sole purpose of dental insurance. Her teeth were so bad she can eat an apple through a chain link fence. Wouldn't kiss her while the deed was occurring. Fucked a girl that was almost too willing and kind of a turn off. I mean, it's good, but she would let me do anal since I liked it, then finish me off by blowing me, then try to kiss me and said, "But I love you so." I told her I went to jail and all my friends to play along with it. Unfortunately it turned her on more that I was presumably a badass. Never spoke to her again. I dated a girl and discovered too late that she had an issue with wicked bad pussy farts during good X. The longest was a solid 30 seconds worth of queef. DM. HS. Made out with a friend's co-worker at his going away party, then proceeded to text back and forth for a couple days and met up. We hooked up a few times while pretty drunk, and the X wasn't great, but hey DM. HS. Turns out she's a mild alcoholic, and one night while hanging out drinking we get down to it and she says, "Talk to me," in a really weird tone. So I start complimenting her body and her looks, but apparently that wasn't enough, and a few seconds later she's on top of me crying while I'm inside her. That's it. I fricked a pig once. After my fiancé dumped me, I started medicating myself with random casual X. The problem with this is that I developed a very disturbing quirk. After orgasming, I would start sobbing. Really hard. It was purely physiological and would stop in seconds, but I was incapable of controlling it. I warned guys that it might happen and told them to just ignore it. The ones that acted like nothing happened were just fine, but there were the ones who felt the need to try to help me solve my problem. They would hold my head and stroke my hair while going shhhh, which just peered me off. Damn, it's just X crying. It didn't mean anything. The comforting was a huge turn off to me, as I imagined the crying must have been, but then I did warn them. I stood in some dog shit when me and my girlfriend at the time sat down at a park. That really was embarrassing. Hooked up with an English teacher at my college. I had drank 2 or 1.5 liters of Moscato and she was randomly there at a concert house show drunk also. Made out. Awkward time at the college when we would encounter each other. Never had her as a teacher but would have been awkward if it happened. I went on a date with this guy a few years ago, and at the beginning of the date, I kind of had to pee but I blew it off. Date was going well. One thing led to another. We start going at it in the backseat of his truck. At this point, I really have to pee. I figured I'd be alright. Sex was good. He makes a comment about how hard I came all over his backseat, and he goes back up front. I notice that this is way more spudge than normal, so I sniffed my hand. Yep, peed all over his car while having sex and didn't realize until afterward. I didn't know what to do, so I just burst out crying. He was surprisingly cool about it. We actually dated for a few months after that. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe and leave a comment.